Most of the time when voting, our motivation is based on fear of man. Think about campaigns. Think about why we're told we have to vote for a certain person. What's normally the number one motivating factor in why you're supposed to vote for person X?
How bad person Y is.
Exactly. Yeah. You better vote for X, because if you don't, Y's going to get in there, and man, oh dare, you're going to feel it. Is that not pretty much the campaigns that go on out there? Proverbs 29 tells us, the fear of man brings a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord shall be safe. Think about that next time the fear campaign starts. Vote for McCain. If you don't vote for McCain and get him in there, Obama's going to come and you're going to be sorry. That's true. Is it possible you might be sorry if McCain would have got elected? Possible? Okay. That's the last time we're going to mention candidates. All right. The number 3 point that we will consider. We are not left to guess at what qualifications, unless as to by what qualifications simple magistrate is bound. We have come to believe that we are allowed to choose evil. In other words, if we don't understand that the Bible gives qualifications for the civil magistrate, if that's not in our thinking, then we're going to go in that voting booth and we're going to vote based on some other standard. Now here's the lie that we've told ourselves as Christians. We've told ourselves that there's the Bible standard, but you don't really need the Bible standard. You can use some other standard to choose right and wrong. But we know that if we get away from the Bible standard, we know that whatever standard we get is going to be wrong. It has to be by definition. It's not based on the way, the truth, and the life. So it's got to be wrong, whatever standard that is. I talked to a young lady just this week, and she opened the discussion by saying she had the opportunity to be a water cooler warrior this week, and of course I'm always interested in those kind of stories. And sure enough, she and her husband were visiting their nephew now in Washington, D.C. And he's got a job in Washington, D.C. Can you tell where this is going already? Sure enough. And they got discussing, of course, politics. And then as every discussion about politics happens, right, it always goes to religion, does it not? Because they're the same anyway. It starts with politics, but it goes to religion. And this young lady's nephew was saying, he's about 40 years old, he was saying, you know, we need to take the best from every religion. After all religions have the golden rule, and all religions believe in loving your neighbor as yourself. So let's just take the best from all. Not true. Go to India. Another lecture for another evening. But it's not true at all. And so he went on to say, you know, when you go talk to people, put the Bible behind you. Get it out of sight. Don't lead with the Bible. That just divides everybody up. You see what's going on here? This young man is basically saying, everybody's good. See, that's what we're led to believe when we go to the voting booth. Remember, we're choosing the lesser of two evils. We don't really think about what it says. The lesser of two evils is still, that would be evil. Wouldn't you love to go in a voting booth and say, here's a man who has a scriptural qualification, which are these: men, God-fearing men, truthful men, hating covetous men. Wouldn't it be nice? It'd be shocking. All of us, you'd probably have to pick us off the ground and be hearted. Go into a voting booth and says, man, this guy here is, my first guy here is Abel. He really fears God. He's a man of truth and he hates covetousness. But you know, the other guy, he's also God-fearing. He also has a lot of ability. He really, really hates covetousness. Man, I got to choose between the guy who hates covetousness and the guy who really, really hates covetousness. You know, we're so far away from even expecting a choice like that. We can't even imagine what would happen like that if we even saw it. That's how bad off we are. So we've gotten used to guys running for office who will happily put the Bible behind them and convince us that it's necessary to do that in order for them to get elected. How many of you have ever heard from a politician who's in office and you confront them about some status bill that they just voted for, and they say, well, but my constituents don't want it, and if I vote for that bill, they'll vote me out of office, and you really want me to stay in office, don't you? You really want me here, don't you? Okay, and why do I want you here? Because I'm scared that the other guy will be worse than you. So I got that fear thing going on. Well, let's move on. 6 points regarding voting in America. Number 1, magic tricks. You only think you're making a choice. We'll talk about that in a little bit more. Number 2, voting for civil magistrates is the one time that Christians are allowed and even encouraged to choose evil. Number 3, Jehoshaphat was condemned by the prophet of God for choosing the lesser of 2 evils, which we'll look at that. Number 4, the most obvious democratic act in all of history was the crucifixion of Christ. Number 5, if we continue to vote for evil, our enemies will never fear us because they will know that we don't stand on principle. And number 6, the real reason why we continue to choose evil is that we, just like the Israelites in the Old Testament, don't believe in providence or sovereignty. Now, that's quite a charge. I expect to be able to support it. Number 1, what is civic voting in America? This is more of a descriptive point here. Now, I don't think this is not voting all the time. This is basically civic voting in America. Basically is what we're presenting here. Number 1, it is a moral choice. It is not an alternative between rye or pumpernickel bread. That's not a moral choice. Or between hamburgers versus beef hot dogs. See, I say beef hot dogs because if it was between pork hot dogs and hamburger, it might be a moral choice, right? But beef hot dogs. It's not that. It's a moral choice. It's a public choice. Therefore, it becomes everybody's business. That's why you argue about it, right? Who cares if your neighbor likes beef hot dogs or hamburger? But we get excited about their choice because his choice, his vote affects me, and my vote affects him. And so we get into an argument, don't we, about it? It gets pretty exciting. Thirdly, it is a theological choice. The civil magistrate has the job of suppressing evil and evildoers. If that's his job, he better be able to understand what an evildoer is and what an evildoer is not. Right? Don't you think it'd be like the first qualification? Sending a civil magistrate forward? Fourth, it is often a blind choice. That is, most of the time, we do not know the one for whom we are either voting for or against. Many people in this room have cast dozens of votes in their lifetime. Dozens. Of those dozens of votes that you've cast, how often did you really know who you were really voting for? My guess would be pretty rare. So I'm saying it's often a quote-unquote blind choice, not completely blind. You depend on other people who perhaps know the candidate. That's how you do it. Fifthly, it may be a phantom choice. Unless you are willing to write in, it may not be a choice at all. And is your vote guaranteed to count? Now, we all love to talk in this country about the almost like the wonderful moment of the American experience. That moment when you go to the voting booth and cast your vote. It's really an American thing, just a wonderful thing to do. But, how many of you, I'm going to ask for a raise of hands here. How many of you have absolute guaranteed faith in the American electoral system right now and absolutely believe that your vote will count every time you cast it. Anybody? Audrey says she does.
Do you mean it will actually get registered? What do you mean by count?
I'm talking about when it's all tallied up at the end, that your vote's going to count.
That my vote will be in
Yeah,
there?
yeah, your vote will still be there after you've cast your vote. A few of you have to have some faith there. Anybody ever hear of electronic voting? How easy is it to track electronic voting? Did anybody see what happened in Maine? I said I wasn't going to mention candidates. Anybody follow that? They announced the winner in Maine in the presidential primaries before 2 counties had even reported, where a particular candidate was very strong. But they announced it before. 2 counties didn't get their vote counted. Oh, I'm sure they went out there. They did like everybody else. You remember the Stalin quote, right? Yeah. Joe Stalin. There's a man who knew power, and there's a man who knew something about voting too. And he said, it's not the person that votes that counts. It's the person that counts the votes that makes the difference. And he knew what he was talking about. See, we don't have a guarantee. We have no guarantees when we go to that voting booth that our vote is actually going to count. That's why I say it may be. It may be a phantom choice. It may not be, but it may be. And 6, it is a somewhat irrevocable choice. What do you do when you find out your choice is a covenant-breaking liar? How do you fix it? You see, it's kind of funny we put this up here. Do we not expect our politicians to lie to us? I mean, anybody here shocked that their politicians lie to them? Oh man, that's never happened before. Wow. Oh, what are we going to do now? Recall them. Yeah, good luck with that.